Okay, we got some breaking news from the NFL world today. So, former Indianapolis Colts head coach, former Eagles offensive coordinator Frank Reich has now been hired by the Carolina Panthers.
Somewhere along those lines. Happy
I like those
Halloween Eve.
I like those glasses, dude. They're
Tonight's
nice.
gonna be a thriller.
Have I told you I worked at the World Series? It was my first year at the stadium. I went to Fanatics Fest, I went to Comic-Con, and I went to the World Series. It was my first year at the stadium, and the Yankees made it all the way to the World Series. Unfortunately, we lost 5 games to the Dodgers.
I said the Giants will be a perfect fit for John Harbaugh because you already established the quarterback situation. You already established the running back position. You already established the wide receiver position, and you have the top 5 pick in the draft.
Todd Bowles, at best, is a mediocre coach. He did the same situation with the Jets back in 2015, ultimately maliciously ruining a power-hungry Baker Mayfield and potentially Mike Evans.
But Indianapolis ultimately came back, got the go-ahead touchdown. Then, at the end of the game, when Brady got the ball less than a minute, Peyton had his head down the entire time because he knew Brady had enough time. But the interception happened. It's funny. All of a sudden, Peyton Manning hears the crowd roaring. He finally looks up and starts jumping up and down real. Good evening, folks. After a couple-week hiatus, we're back to the regular Everything on the Table with my co-host, Agent Warrior X. 2 weeks ago, I did a solo edition. Last week, we took a week off from the show, so it's only fitting that he's back for episode 10, marking the first double-digit episode. You've been gone for a while. Catch us up.
From the heart of Sin City, home of the 3-time Super Bowl champion Vegas Raiders, home of the 3-time Vegas Golden Knights, and home of the 3-time Vegas Aces. Greetings from fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. I am your co-host, Agent Warrior X, and today is episode 10 of Everything on the Table. I have been busy with work lately, and to tell you the truth, I don't got my Yankee hat, I don't got my Giants hat, but I got a Raiders hat. And of course, a CM Punk hat, some jersey, shirt that I bought from WWE World yesterday.
Yeah, so, and the reason you were over there and the reason you got the CM Punk shirt is because WrestleMania was in Vegas.
Yep, WrestleMania wasn't just in Las Vegas, we were also Raw after Mania and Friday Night SmackDown as well. Ultimately, I see this as a really good session so far. So today's topic, we're going to talk about the Dexter Lawrence trade. We're going to talk about the recap after WrestleMania. And of course, we're going to talk about the NFL draft because the NFL draft is going to look very interesting come Thursday night or Thursday afternoon here. So allow me to start this show off to say that WrestleMania 42 was amazing in night 2. Night 1 was mediocre. It could have done better if only some championship title if only the titles would change in certain matches, but ultimately it didn't happen. So let's talk about the recap between Drew McIntyre and Jacob Fatu. It was a no holds barred match at the beginning of the show at 6 p.m. or 3 p.m. here. Ultimately, I see that match a really good one only because Jacob Fatu had the slighter advantage in terms of his athleticism and charisma. Drew McIntyre, on the other hand, he had the same thing, but ultimately it wasn't enough. Yes, we know Drew McIntyre's weakness is quitting on the company and all that stuff, but I think, to be honest with you, I knew Jacob Fatu was going to cost him the championship the moment that the officials handed Cody Rhodes the championship from start to finish. Who won that match? Jacob Fatu. The next match I'm going to cover up is the women's the Women's Intercontinental Champion between AJ Lee and Becky Lynch. It was a good match overall, but it wasn't enough again. The winner of that match and new Women's Intercontinental Champion, Becky Lynch, for the third time in the last 6 months. And then finally, the best one I say for last. The main event of night 1, Randy Orton versus Cody Rhodes, former mentor, former student of Legacy back in 2009. It was good. He didn't need Pat McAfee to help him. What did Pat McAfee do? He entered the ring as a referee with something on his neck. But ultimately, I knew for a fact that it was pretty much predictable, because the fact that Cody Rhodes wanted to hand the championship more than enough time, only for him to lose it to Drew and during the road to WrestleMania, and then ultimately winning it on Friday night because he got involved into the Elimination Chamber and the Royal Rumble. Winner of that match, still champion, Cody Rhodes. But what happened at the very end? Oh my God. It was crazy. Randy Orton just spun him. Did you see his eye, Nikki? When he took off his glasses on Monday night? Did you see what happened to his eye?
Not a pleasant sight.
I kid you not. It was by far the most gruesome. You know what's familiar? You know that one scene from Friday with Ice Cube? Yeah. When one of the characters took off his glasses, he had a black eye. That's why. So the next thing.
One,
Go ahead.
I'll say this. It was better than the last WrestleMania in Vegas, that being Mania 9. But overall, it was just... And something that stood out, there's this thing called storytelling. Drew McIntyre's reaction to the toolbox is a perfect example. It tied into a previous experience, and it made perfect sense, as if he was having flashbacks to CM Punk in Hell in a Cell. That's just simple things like that are effective storytelling. And that's something we don't always get. So I got
It's either they botched the storyline process, or they messed up big time, depending on the situation. And I also got the Yankees and the Red Sox game right now. And currently the Yankees are leading 1-0 against the Red Sox. So night two was amazing. Obafemi versus Brock Lesnar. I knew Obafemi was going to have a massive upset against Brock Lesnar. Because normally Brock Lesnar is the favorite, right? Between two powerhouses, one from NXT, one from as a future Hall of Famer, I knew Obafemi was going to manhandle Brock Lesnar, ultimately retiring. The next matchup, I'm going to say the next one has to be the ladder match between Penta, JD McDonough, Rusev, Javon Evans, and Rey Mysterio. I said Penta would win it. And I called it.
And at 51 years old, Rey Mysterio is still amazing at 51.
You know what's crazy? Even if you're getting up there in age, you still have fuel left in the tank in your prime. But ultimately, I think what could have done better is add one more person as a return. Speaking of returns, yes, ladies and gentlemen, Paige has officially returned after a long hiatus from AEW. So my honest thought about Paige returning, I don't know. Considering how Paige wanted to win a championship in AEW or Saria in FKA wise, but I think Paige should have won a championship a long time ago when she came back to WWE, when she was called up from WWE back in 2014. She did in 2014, but she finally won a tag team championship with the Bella Twins.
I mean, it was a solid moment, but I think this should really just be a short-term thing. I think in the long term, this would be dragged out. It'd be but it's cool if you just keep it short term. It's a way to reintroduce Paige and then go from there with something new.
You know what's also great? That Demon Finn Balor versus Dominic Mysterio. That was a good one too. I knew for a fact that it was a street fight, a Vegas street fight, but he brought out his demon with him. I think the demon persona looks like a real good gimmick. But speaking of funny moments, the funniest moment on WrestleMania this year has to be none other than Danhausen. I laughed so hard at that segment that I nearly died of laughter. I understand Danhausen came out of AEW, but where's Hook when you need him? Where's Hook when you need him? Oh man. So the final thing I want to talk about is the main event of night 2 between Cody Rhodes, CM Punk and Roman Reigns. It was from start to finish, the feud and the storyline buildup was perfect. A perfect way to let Roman win a championship, win the World Heavyweight Championship for the first time since his Universal days. But he never won his World Championship in his career, but he did win the Universal and WWE Championship in his career. But Roman Reigns should definitely hold the World Heavyweight Championship for a long time. And I think it could surpass Goldberg's World Heavyweight Championship title reign back in WCW. It could surpass Triple H when he won the World Heavyweight Championship back in 2002.
Roman Reigns, to me, he strikes me as that guy. He's meant by design to be a long-term title guy. He's not really a short-term type of guy. Like some guys were more short-term, like Rey Mysterio. Roman's more meant to be a long-term guy. If you want to talk big gold belt history, there's a lot of things that could come to mind there, both good and bad. Some of the greats, you had Ric Flair, Sting, Hollywood Hogan with the NWO, Goldberg. You had even Scott Steiner, which was one of the redeeming qualities of WCW's dying months. And then you go to WWE, Triple H, Batista with his first run especially, Undertaker, Edge, the rated R superstar on SmackDown.
What about Rey Mysterio? You did mention that. Oh yeah, John Cena. John Cena won the World Heavyweight Championship at one point.
Right, I affiliate him more with the WWE title. Kind of the same with Randy Orton. Like, to me, guys that stand out, because Edge was mainly the guy on SmackDown. You got, of course, CM Punk, the straight edge world champion. Feud of the year with Jeff Hardy in 2009.
I kid you not. That feud between Jeff Hardy and CM Punk was timeless. It was timeless. And by the way, the Yankees are leading 3-0 against the Red Sox. But back to what I was saying about the World Heavyweight Championship. The youngest champion is Randy Orton. No one else. The youngest champion, World Heavyweight Champion is Randy Orton at the age of 24.
And I'll say this about Orton. That, in the short term, it was a flop, but because they put the belt on him, they tried to turn him babyface. The original plan was to have him win it back at Mania 21, but that botch was a blessing in disguise because when it wasn't really working around the winner, they tried teasing Batista. They knew when the fans reacted, they were onto something, and it caused them to call an audible and go with Batista. So that was one of those bad in the short term, but it all worked out in the long term. Besides, Orton did eventually. He came down a little bit to the upper mid-card semi-main event, but he eventually got back to being a main eventer in 2007, but a more polished one after a few more years' experience working with guys like Undertaker, Kurt Angle, teaming with Edge.
You know, when it comes to WrestleMania moments like these, I can name you my top 3 WrestleMania moments of all time. My number 3, I'm going to say Chris Benoit, God bless, winning his first World Heavyweight Championship. Yes, I know Chris Benoit was known for winning the United States Champion, etc. But Chris Benoit finally, in 2004, has finally won a championship in his career. Number 2, John Cena winning the WWE Championship against JBL in 2005. And the number one is not Roman Reigns versus CM Punk. It's not Cody Rhodes versus Roman. There were two matches. It was the WrestleMania in Los Angeles and WrestleMania in Philly. But the number one WrestleMania moment has to be Rey Mysterio winning his first World Heavyweight Championship.
I'm going to do a little something different. I'm going to go by decade here. I'll say, 80s, Macho Man Steamboat, Hogan slamming Andre, Macho Man winning the belt. 90s, I'll go Warrior Hogan as an honorable mention, the boyhood dream coming true, Austin era beginning at Mania 14, and Austin passing out to the sharpshooter, which was a timeless moment that forever altered, and pretty much it's had such a huge domino effect on the Attitude Era going forward. The double turn, everything else that came after it.
You know, when it comes to WrestleMania stages, you think of best WrestleMania stages concepts. You think of WrestleMania 30 in New Orleans. You think of WrestleMania 29 in New York City, which is every landmark in New York. Or better yet, the best one, WrestleMania in Orlando in 2017. That was by far the best concept. You can argue it, say, WrestleMania 30. It's either 31 or 33. Yeah, that's 33. WrestleMania 33 or WrestleMania 31. But nobody can top down 2017's WrestleMania 33.
Yeah, that was one of the coolest and best put together stages that they've had, especially over the past decade. Some other ones, you had WrestleMania 20 had a nice stage at Madison Square Garden. Even you had WrestleMania 14 was cool. What else did you have? If you want to more recent ones, Mania 29, that was nice at MetLife.
Mania 29 at MetLife. Mania at Philly, it could have been better if only they got the landmark properly. And I mean the Liberty Bell, the crack Liberty Bell.
They did, yeah. They did what they had to do. I would say overall, Mania 42, combine the two nights together, it was passable. Night 1 wasn't the worst of all time. It wasn't Mania 9, Mania 11 bad, but it could have certainly been better. It wasn't Mania 3 or Mania 14 or 17's kind of like that one that got ruined. It was really good. Then the finish in the long term was really bad with Austin going heel. It's like the series Lost, where the ending you're like, oh man.
I don't blame him. That WrestleMania 17 with Austin turning against the Rock and Mr. McMahon handing the championship to him, it's either like they did a mistake they did with last year's WrestleMania when John Cena won the championship against Cody Rhodes.
And with Austin Mania 17, I get it. In the short term, it was a surprise no one saw coming. But in the long term, it did hurt some of the momentum of his character because him being part of the alliance made no sense at all. Well, that storyline's a whole nother subject.
Normally that time is, I'm going to say that normally that time would be the one where Austin normally goes after the corporate BS with the McMahon family. But having Mr. McMahon joining the corporate with Steve Austin, are you trying to put something to rest after all that years of stunner after stunner after stunner? This made no sense. But however, WrestleMania's 42 stage was nothing more than WrestleMania 17 with vibes. But when you decided to have Cody Rhodes retain against Randy Orton, night 1 was more than likely lost a plot against night 2.
Mania 42 is all right, but you got Jacob Fatu, Roman Reigns. There's some potential something there. You got perfect dynamics. You have a feud for Seth Rollins And you have the potential to build a new star with Brock Lesnar's retirement. You got to capitalize on that one.
Yeah, he's a future Hall of Famer. He's not a superstar. He's an ass kisser. Ass kicker. Sorry. He is Brock Lesnar, one of the greatest powerhouse heavyweights. I think in the future he could be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Brock Lesnar could be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Now, as for Obafemi, you know what he said in this post show? He's gonna go after Roman by the end of the month. I'm hearing something about that. If it's true that Obafemi could go after Roman Reigns after Jacob Fatu, they have to develop the feud and storyline perfectly.
And whoa, the Trailblazers are up 14-4 over the Spurs, but it's early in the first quarter, so I just looked up and saw that.
Yeah, for me, I'm just watching the Yankees and Red Sox right now. And currently we're leading by three runs. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the Dexter Lawrence trade. What was the Bengals thinking? I understand Trayvon Hendrickson went to the Ravens, but trading for Dexter Lawrence for the top 10 pick? It was completely unnecessary if you think about it. Why would you trade your top 10 pick to the Giants when you still need a defensive tackle?
The Bengals, they need a whole lot of help on defense. It's not even funny. And the sad part is with them, they still got the same coaching staff. And to me, part of it is coaching in the front office. You've gone for years where you've struggled to address the offensive line, even going back to when Andy Dalton was the QB. Last couple of years, you've tried building up the defense to still no results. At some point, you got to look at the people evaluating and people coaching them up during practice. And thing else notice is all the top performers will always tell you that usually training's the hardest part, the game's the easy part. Even Shannon Sharp hinted at the idea that when Denver Broncos, with him, Elway, Terrell Davis, their training camps were usually harder than some of the games. The games were the easy part. And it's easy to believe because that's a team that went back-to-back and won 2 Super Bowls.
You know what's crazy? The Bengals were desperate enough after Henderson got signed with the with the Ravens. They had to trade their top 10 pick to the Giants. You know what that means? The Giants now have 2 first-round picks like last year. We have the 3rd pick and the 25th pick from the Texans. Jackson Dart, Abdul Carter. Now, what could be this time? It could be Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, Mansour from LSU, and or Jordan Tyson. I see us, the Giants, drafting Sonny Styles and Jordan Tyson because you still need a receiver.
Yeah, you do. You definitely need that. Another thing you're going to need, you got to address the offensive line and get some help there too. And now part of it is Dart has to learn to be more cautious with the ball too, which is something that you're going to have to hope he works on. But they definitely got to build up their offense a little bit. And they still have room to work on the defense in the later rounds of the draft. But I'm curious what they're going to do because with those extra picks, there's different directions you could go position-wise. You could go receiver offensive line. You could go receiver defensive lineman. You got different receivers that you mentioned they could take. I'm actually curious what they're going to do because there's several directions you could go in with those picks. Now, obviously, the other picks before each respective pick is going to obviously have a factor into what they do. But we'll have to see. That's going to be interesting.
Despite the Jets having 2 first-round picks, the Giants have 2 first-round picks this time. But I think, to be honest with you, today was a great day. Not because I enjoyed my time in Las Vegas after WWE World on Monday, but I also went to Topgolf today, and I went to I went to the arcade and just chilled out, did a little shopping, and that's pretty much it. But ultimately, for the NFL draft, I already know the Vegas Raiders are going to draft Fernando Mendoza this Thursday. I already know the Titans are going to take Jeremiah Love. At best case scenario, the Giants either take Sonny Styles or Caleb Downs. But with the number 10th pick and the 5th pick, you could go one of two ways. One, build around Brian Burns with Caleb Downs and Sonny Styles. Two, build around Dart. You need your quarterback protected. You need another receiver. Do you want to go for offensive tackle or wide receiver, which is Francis Buaga or Jordan Tyson or Cardell Tate? Or three, mixed offense and defense. Drafted offense for Jackson Dart and drafted defense for secondary help. But I think, in my opinion, the Giants would do like mixed. Draft an offensive player and a defensive player. So I'm gonna go with Caleb Downs and Jordan Tyson. As long as Jordan Tyson stays healthy, that's the problem with him. He needs to stay healthy in situations like these in college. But I think, in my opinion, Jordan Tyson should definitely be part of the Giants.
But time will tell what ultimately happens, and it's going to be interesting. And I was doing a mock draft earlier. I was looking at, for the Eagles, I think first round, you could either go get an offensive lineman because you know that Lane Johnson isn't getting any younger. He might have 2 years at most best. You could either go get the guy from Penn State who you're eyeing up, your top, what's his name again?
Dang, we both forgot, did we?
Yeah, exactly. But you either go there or you draft the best edge available to try to replace Jalen Phillips' pass rushing. But I'd say early rounds mainly go, maybe try to address the holes you lost. I'd say either first or second round, get an edge or a linebacker because you lost Phillips, you lost Nakobe Dean to the Raiders. You need to at least get somebody early that could be a suitable replacement. And then maybe middle rounds, you go and get a running back or something and maybe focus there. Although speaking of the Eagles, I don't think it's going to happen draft night, but the A.J. Brown talks, it's looking more probable now with all these extra receivers they brought in because you think about it, you're like, wait, they signed 3 additional receivers? They're not going to play all those guys. So I started thinking, I'm like, yeah, it's probably going to happen. It could happen in June after the draft, but it probably is going to happen at some point. They're going to move on from the A.J. Brown, and they're bringing in these extra receivers to have depth.
And that's what the Eagles lacked, defensive depth. Despite having the majority of Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, and of course, Cooper DeJean and other defenders. But despite all that, the Eagles lack defensive depth. Sure, you have your secondary of Adoree Jackson, etc. But the Eagles lack defensive depth.
Yeah, I mean, especially the linebacker room's the area I'm most concerned with because that's where he lost. Those are key losses. And eventually we're going to need a safety too because Blankenship's gone to the Texans, which FYI, I know they're a dark horse candidate, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Texans try to trade up a few picks for a receiver to try to give Stroud some help so there's less pressure on him in big games. Because we saw last year, there's that you have CJ Stroud now, but you're going to start questioning if he's the true long-term guy for your franchise. You might want to get a receiver to help out a little bit in those pressure games come playoff time. Because they could still easily win that division if, say, Jacksonville takes a slight step back with a harder schedule.
Despite all that, I think if the Texans decide to trade for A.J. Brown, I would say, you know what? with Nico Collins and AJ Brown, that could be a duo. If only CJ Stroud could play his cards right and not get sacked too many times.
And that's a whole nother subject in itself, Sam. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that one. But come Thursday, the draft's gonna come. There's a lot of mock drafts going out there. Will they be true? Okay, maybe some of them. We know Fernando Mendoza is going to the Raiders, but 2 all the way on, 2 for 32 for night 1. Some of those mock drafts might be accurate, some of them won't, but that's just every year. But speaking of sports news, Doc Rivers has officially called it a career. He leaves on an interesting legacy as a coach.
You know, to tell you the truth, when it comes to Doc Rivers is best known for his 2008 run with the Celtics. I know for a fact he's going to get into a Hall of Fame eventually. But have you been seeing his games recently, Nikki? Before he went to the Sixers and the Bucks, the Clippers and the Celtics were still winning in spite of Rivers. But I would say that Doc Rivers had a great career. But here's where problems lie. Former coaches be calling it quits only for them to go elsewhere. Speaking of that, now let's talk about Mike Tomlin. Because I heard
I'll
he
put it
joined
this
us.
way real quick before we get in. I do want to put it in simple terms with Doc Rivers. His coaching career is two tails. Tail A, when there's low expectations, he's a drastic overachiever. When there's high expectations, he's a big underachiever. It's basically you put those two together, that's his coaching career for you.
And tail B, choking away multiple leads. Started off with the Clippers back during the pandemic. They blew a 3-1 lead against the Nuggets, ultimately losing to the eventual champion Lakers.
Yep, and that's going to be the one mark people have against him. But at the end of the day, he's still one of the better coaches of the 21st century. He's still, I mean, he wouldn't have, if he was truly horrible, he wouldn't have lasted as long as he did. He obviously was doing something right to get there. He took the Orlando Magic from a dumpster fire to a respectable team in the East. He was there for the ride with Boston. He actually helped keep the Clippers locker room morale up and kept the chemistry going when the Donald Sterling situation happened, because that could have broke some teams. Doc Rivers did his job basically as a mediator, keeping that team together, so he gets credit for that. And he did lead the 2018 Clippers with no expectations to the, 2019, with no expectations to the 8th seed and 2 wins over the Warriors.
What's crazy about Doc Rivers is that Doc Rivers is one of those coaches who's a great coach, but ultimately chokes at the worst time during the playoffs. Again, have you been seeing Doc Rivers lately? They've been still winning in spite of him. But I think, in my opinion, you mentioned that he carried the Magic to a championship in the 90s, right?
It was to the playoffs. When he came in 99, there was no expectation. This was pre-T-Mac, post-Shaq, post-Penny. They eventually went to the 9th seed his first year, but he won Coach of the Year because he greatly exceeded expectations. Then year 2, they actually made it into the playoffs. They got T-Mac, and they were a formidable force for a couple of years to come.
We already know the Bulls in the 90s were the greatest team in the 90s, alongside, people say the Braves, but the Yankees are also the team of the decade as the most successful franchise of the 20th century, because they've won 25 championships in one century. Now, for the late 90s, in terms of basketball, besides the Bulls, the best team in 97, besides the Chicago Bulls and the Knicks, has to be the Heat with Alonzo Mourning. That was by far the greatest team they formed.
And that Eastern Conference, that really was the last of truly special team playoff rivalries, because you had between 4 teams in the East: Chicago Bulls, New York Knicks, Indiana Pacers, Miami Heat. Those 4 teams, multiple pairings of those 4 teams clashed on numerous times during the playoffs, and it made for must-see playoff basketball. Between
You know what I call
Jordan
it?
versus Ewing,
Yep.
Knicks
Jordan versus Ewing.
versus Heat versus
The
Bulls,
Spurs,
Bulls
the Bulls.
versus Pacers, Jordan versus Reggie Miller, Pacers
what I
versus
call it?
Knicks.
I call it the 4 Eastern Horsemen. The 4 Eastern Horsemen. Because the fact that the Knicks were still great during that time with Patrick Ewing, despite the fact that the Pacers with Reggie Miller was still great, and despite the fact that the 90s Jordan was still in his prime, but the Heat was an unexpected team.
Yeah, and you got to give big credit to the owner for actually giving Pat Riley the bag to go from New York to Miami, and it certainly paid off in the long haul. Even as an executive, Pat Riley, I do think in recent years he's starting to lose touch a little bit, which it happens even to the best of them at some point. But for years, he did a really good job, even with roster construction, getting the contracts right to get all three on that big three with Wade, LeBron, Bosh on the same team and still have enough room to get the right guys like Shane Battier to help out, or El Gaskis, a familiar face with LeBron, to help the team's transition from Wade to LeBron.
You know, for some teams like these, you think of, when it comes to elite teams back in the 90s through 2000s, you think of the Bulls in the 90s. You think of the Knicks where they had Patrick Ewing and John Starks and John Starks, etc. You think of the Pacers with Reggie Miller. You think of the Heat with Alonzo Mourning. You think of the Cavaliers with LeBron back in the mid 2000s. You think of the Sixers when Iverson was still in his prime. You think of Iverson when he was still in his prime. You think of the Nets when they made back-to-back championships with Jason Kidd, Richard Jefferson, and of course, Kerry Kittles, and of course, Kenyon Martin. You think of the Spurs, Mavericks, Kings, etc. But the best team in the 90s and early 2000s, besides the Bulls, I'm going to say the Lakers and the Spurs, because they have won multiple championships from each year. The three-peat with the Pacers, Sixers, and the Nets. Then the Nets made it again, lost to the Pacers, lost to the Spurs. Then the 2004 season when the Pistons were the underdogs, they won that year. But then 2005, let's just pretend that 2005 NBA Finals was a joke, because I know for a fact that it was one of the worst NBA Finals we've ever seen. But 2006 with Dallas, where Dirk Nowitzki and the Mavericks was absolutely timeless. But 2007 with San Antonio, it was nothing more than the best team in the mid 2000s.
It's crazy. 99 to 2010, the Western Conference was pretty much the Lakers and Spurs show, excluding the 06 finals, because every year the Western Conference representative, except for 06, was either the Spurs or the Lakers between 1999 to 2010. Spurs, Lakers 3 years, Spurs 1 year, Lakers, Spurs, then the Mavs, but then it was Spurs and Lakers 3 straight finals during that whole stretch in terms of Western Conference representative.
You know, for Eastern teams like these, like the Nets, Knicks, Sixers, etc., but I think the 2009 NBA Finals was absolutely great because Kobe Bryant finally won a championship after a post hiatus of either retiring or requesting a trade, right? He requested a trade a while back, but ultimately he stood with the Lakers.
And you know what, I'll say this. I think that Redeem team in 08, those guys playing together had a positive effect on that 08-09 season. It feels like all those guys that played there, Kobe, D-Wade, LeBron, Carmelo, Dwight Howard, and etc., they took the momentum from the Olympics and carried it over into the next season, and you really showed. Carmelo really stepped up. Him and Chauncey Billups helped the Nuggets reach the conference finals, had a good series with the Lakers. The Magic went on a surprise run to the finals. D Wade took a struggling Heat team, won a scoring title, and carried them to the playoffs. It had a real positive domino effect on all those guys' games, and it elevated their teams and created a fun season.
It wasn't just a fun season, but it was the most exciting one at best. Now, for the NBA tanking situation, this is a quick discussion. Have you seen the tiebreaker a couple days ago? So now the Jazz won the tiebreaker. The Pelicans won the tiebreaker. The Knicks won the tiebreaker. So what does this mean? The Nets, Pacers, and the Wizards still has a 14% chance of getting the number one pick and a 52% chance of getting the top 4 pick. So what does this mean? We'll find out come next month.
Yes, we will. And on the flip side, though, there is other teams that the opposite teams, the ones that have really stepped up their game. Now, I'll say this. There's 3 teams across the entire NBA playoffs that are parallel to each other. My team, the 76ers, the Phoenix Suns, and Portland Trailblazers, in terms of they all exceeded expectations and made it to the playoffs, but their opening round matchups look like a surefire elimination waiting to happen. So they can get credit for exceeding expectations, but they just don't have the tools to win with their current rosters come playoff time. And the Sixers, I'll tell you this, game 1 was like a continuation of game 7 from 2023 with updated rosters.
And I'm going to tell you this right now. The Sixers better step up against the same team that they lost 3 years ago. They have to step up, no matter what, even if you won the harder trade. But here's my thing. I wanted to say a few things about these teams. One, the Buffalo Sabres finally won a playoff game for the first time in 15 years. And 2, Manchester City is on the brink of winning the league if they win all their games. Arsenal could still win their games too, but ultimately, if Arsenal lose at least 1 or 3 games, fixture matches, they're done. They're done for the Premier League. They're still in the Champions League, but they still need to be worked on.
And it did with the NBA playoff. The series that I'm looking most excited about in terms of fan is actually the Knicks and Hawks, because now they're tied at 1 apiece. Last night, you had CJ McCollum emerge as the unlikely hero, leading the Hawks to a fourth quarter rally and 1-point victory. Now they take it to game 3 back at home. Interesting for momentum.
That's crazy. That comeback was crazy in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, so salute to the Hawks. And it's drawing parallels to the Knicks from last couple of years, because you had last 2 years against the Indiana Pacers, they were favorites. They lost. And last year, the Pacers got hot at the right time, made a run all the way to the finals. Now here are the Knicks, favorites against the Hawks. And the Hawks have some parallels to last year's Pacers in terms of getting hot later in the season. And considering how the Hawks have matched up against them so far, wouldn't be surprised there's an upset. But speaking of surprise, the Pistons, they got to get their chemistry going back together. Now, granted, Cade Cunningham was out for a bit. It's just 1 game, but they got to be able to turn it around after that game 1 loss.
Hey, Paolo Banchero has been doing very well, to tell you the truth.
Hey, and the Orlando Magic they're a solid team. They just don't know how to consistently put everything together. They did a good job game 1. They did a phenomenal job in the play-in game, destroying the Charlotte Hornets and smacking them back to reality. The Hornets may have been a bit better this year, but maybe they just need another year or so. And the interesting thing with that is LaMelo Ball, as talented as he is, he's got to work on some of his impulsive decision-making. That's caused him trouble on numerous occasions, both on and off the court. We've seen it twice this year. Him reaching out for the play with Bam, inadvertently injured Bam. Now LaMelo's got to live with the fact that it caused Bam to get injured. Even if that wasn't his initial intention, now he's got to live with that guilt for a bit. And remember the car crash with that custom car.
You know what it is? Sometimes when it comes to playoff teams, I know the Warriors are one of those teams that got into play a tournament and then eliminated. Steph Curry is getting old at this point. His prime is running out. I think the most shocking turn of events called the NBA draft next month could see the Golden State Warriors being the number one pick. If this is true, and the Nets ultimately end up with the 7th or 6th pick, I'm hearing rumors that the Nets could end up trading for Paolo Banchero.
That one remains to be determined, but what we do know for sure, though, is that the Houston Rockets they're young core, talented guys, Sengun, Reed Shepard, those guys, they're pretty solid, Thompson, but they do need the veteran to lead them come playoff time to win. We saw it last year in the opening round against the Warriors, and we saw in game 1 without KD, they struggled against a Luka and AR-15 Austin Reeves Lakers. And speaking of the Warriors, I'll just say this. It was fun while it lasted, but it's looking like it's time to move on, get ready for the future.
You know, some dynasties do die, but at a certain cost. Like the Chiefs. The Chiefs is one prime example. Kansas City at this point went from a dynasty team to now a future mediocre team. Because we already know Patrick Mahomes is already almost in his 30s. We know Travis Kelce's getting old. And top it all off, they signed Kenneth Walker to a multi-year deal.
In Kansas City's case, hey, if everyone stays healthy, especially their two main stars, Mahomes and Walker, they should at least make the playoffs if that's the case. But as far as getting back into championship contention, and we got to wait and see. Can it still happen with Mahomes? Oh, absolutely. This year, time will tell on that one. But I don't know. The question is this the end of the dynasty, or is this just a temporary halt for Kansas City?
I'm not going to say it's a temporary hold, but I will say it could be the end of a dynasty.
And then you get those other type of end of dynasties like the Chicago Bulls. It's like back in the early 90s, the owner sold his soul to have a dynasty. He sacrificed the entire future, the 2000s, 2010s, 2020s, so on, just to have a dynasty, because there's having a dynasty cooling off a little bit, like the Lakers after the Kobe dynasty. They cooled off for a bit, then got back into contention, won a championship in 2020. And they're still a formidable force now. There's the Boston post Larry Bird. They cooled off for a while, but eventually won a title in 2008. We're in and out of the mix throughout the 2010s and won a finals in 2023. And then there's the Bulls, who just, once their dynasty's been over, oh man, except for that one run to the conference finals in 2011, what did they really had to write home about that was truly special?
Yep. That 2023 run was none other than the Denver Nuggets. I think the Denver Nuggets had the great victory, but the Heat was the ultimate underdog.
And for the Miami Heat, they had a nice run there with Jimmy Butler for a bit, but with them eventually moving on from him, and you saw what they lost in the play-in this year, got completely destroyed last year in the opening round. You got to wonder if Coach Eric Spoelstra's time might be running low, or if obviously their window's closed to win a championship. They had their chance, Jimmy Bam and company, but now they're just a team in the mix.
At this point, I think the Heat might be another team that could go for the top 5 pick. If they can play their cards right, but I don't know. As long as Bam Adebayo needs to stay healthy and Tyler Hero needs to stay consistent, they still got a shot at playing.
Yeah, and that's But that's something that remains to be seen because there is talent in Miami, certainly. They got guys, Tyler Hero, Norman Powell, Jamie Jacquez Jr. is a solid role player, Bam Adebayo. That there is talent there, but they just don't have that factor to compete at the moment. Another team similar that actually did make the playoffs, the Toronto Raptors. What I've seen against the Cavs, it's like there's talent there. Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett, Jacob Potel, those guys. They got players there, but they don't have that true leader come playoff time, and it's catching up to them now against the Cavs, who the only thing is with Mitchell and Harden, I'm not sure how well they're going to do in the long haul in the playoffs, but at least, first round Cavs are basically championship contenders, and the second round, the playoff jitters catch up to them. That's been their story the past couple of years, and it looks like that's continuing so far.
Best case scenario for the Raptors, they got a good future. Best case scenario, they got a good future. Despite having Scotty Barnes, besides having Brandon Ingram, despite all that, I think, that's tough. That's tough for the Red Sox. And it's a strikeout. You know what they say, Nikki? Baseball's a game of inches. Baseball's a game of inches with the ABS system.
And another update, Spurs have come within 1 point now, 29-28, but that game's still early. So we'll have to see what happens there. But speaking of the Spurs.
And the Sixers are leading by 6.
Yep. Interesting. Let's see. It's certainly better than game 1 where they couldn't get anything going, but there's still plenty of time. We got to wait and see how that one plays out.
Hey, at least VJ Enskov is doing great for you alongside Tyrese Maxey. I think Tyrese Maxey is your future star player, better than Joel Embiid, if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us, me, Mitch, Blaze, we're pushing for this team to build around Maxey and Edgecombe, but I think we should move. If it were up to me, I would say, Embiid, thank you for your services. Congrats on that MVP, but time to part ways. But the question is, who's going to take that contract, though? That's the thing that's keeping us stuck with him.
The Nets wouldn't. The Nets wouldn't take it. I would rather just take. I would rather take in the offseason, I would rather draft the best player available, then try to trade. If we don't get the top number 1 pick, then we might as well have no choice but to trade that pick to either one of the teams. But I would love to get Donovan Mitchell or Peyton by the offseason.
Oh man, yep, it's going to be a long off season. The Nets got a lot to consider, and they have a lot of work to do to rebuild alongside the Pelicans and the Jazz, especially the Nets and the Pelicans.
Nah, the Pelicans should have never traded that pick to the Hawks.
Man, foolish, and it's crazy. CJ McCollum ended up being the hero last night, and now the Hawks, building behind Jalen Johnson, actually look like they could be a formidable team and a potential contender in the upcoming years in the Eastern Conference. So, huge mistake. And even that Zion contract was a huge mistake considering you're paying him that much money and you don't really have a supporting cast around him.
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, now let's talk about one more topic or two, because I think there is another topic I want to talk about when it comes to famous celebrities being fans of these teams, right? You think of famous celebrities like Ice Cube being a diehard Raider. You see him wearing a Raiders hat and snapback, by the way. You have Ice Cube as a Raider fan. You have Ice Cube as a Raider fan. You have no way. Oh, what a catch for Rafaela. Sorry about that. I was watching the Yankees and Red Sox game, but I think the best way to describe NFL celebrity as fans for the NFL, Ice Cube is one of them. You have who else is part of the Stephen A. Smith is a Steeler because I know he hates the Cowboys and hosts a First Take. You have Skip Bayless, Dallas. Obviously, no big surprise. You have wow, you
Arnold
have a lot.
Schwarzenegger is a Chargers fan.
I forgot. Yeah, thank you. As a Chargers,
Go,
go,
Chargers,
just
go.
go. Yep,
Will Smith, Eagles, Mark Wahlberg, New England.
yep. Well, Will Smith. How can I not forget about Will Smith as a diehard? He's a Philly native all around. Here's another Philly native, Freeway. Freeway is another Philly native, despite Lil Uzi Vert and of course Meek Mill. But Freeway was an OG Philly native.
And so was the late, great Kobe Bryant. He was a big Eagles fan, too. He never hit it.
You know what's crazy in that 2001 NBA Finals? Besides Iverson stepping over Ty Lue, it had to be the one game that they won the NBA Finals in front of his hometown in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean, for Kobe, it was definitely a sweet moment to win a championship at home, even as a member of the away team. That was still a special moment that anybody would be happy to achieve, period. And you talk about celebrity fans, Minnesota all around, Jesse Ventura, he's a Minnesota fan all around. Vikings, T-Wolves, Twins. Hey, something happened with the Yankees.
Yep, we scored 4-0 Yanks. It's an RBI double. But go ahead.
Yeah, like I said, other ones you got Jesse Ventura, Minnesota, period. He's just a huge Minnesota fan. I think he even did briefly radio commentary for the Vikings games before he went into politics.
What's also great about celebrities being fans of like football, basketball, baseball, I think, to be honest with you, I think another good celebrity that's also a Giant fan, it can't be, of course, Jay-Z, it can't be others. The voice actor of Harry Potter, he's a diehard Giant.
Yeah, I mean, I know Total Pro Sports has done numerous of these videos of each NFL team, each NBA, each MLB, each NHL throughout their run on YouTube of the biggest celebrity fans for each team, and they have a ton of lists.
Yep, Michigan Mike, Detroit Lions, myself, Giants, you Eagles. Jay Banksy is a Boston native all around. Just basically the Red Sox and the Red Sox and the Patriots mostly, and the Celtics too. But I kid you not, we're whooping the Red Sox ass so hard. Especially what happened at that game three of that wild card series last year. Cam Schlittler has thrown 14 strikeouts in that wild card game. If you've seen his performance, well, I know you won the NL East that time. If you saw Cam Schlittler's performance against the Red Sox, especially he's a Boston native, this lets you know that if you're a Yankee living in a Massachusetts area, you are most likely going to get hate messages. That's the rule. That's the game. If you are a Massachusetts native, rivalries with the Yankees, you are most likely going to get hate messages. Look what Cam Schlittler did. He got those hate messages, and some of the fan base even wrote death threats to him. After that, I'm like, bro, are you that salty over that one game that Cam Schlittler did in that game three? And I think this Thursday should be the day that we beat Boston with Schlittler.
But baseball season has only just begun, and certainly from your side, looking a lot brighter than it does with the Phillies, because it was fun while it lasted for a few years, but they're starting to come crashing down now.
What's crazy about the Phillies is that, sure, you made some moves, but I think you could have done better if you only got Bo Bichette or Kazuma Okamoto and pair up with Kyle Schwarber and JT Realmuto and, of course, Orion Kirkary. and Bryce Harper.
And now they got to live with the consequences of it. How bad is it? Well, we'll know for sure come around August and September when wins and losses have a much more significant effect.
Yep, that's the end of the inning. And to be honest, Nicky, it was fun while it lasted. And all of you, thank you for the nice welcome return. I'm your co-host, Agent Warrior X, and until next time, goodbye, my friends. Have a good night in the East Coast and have a great day in the West Coast.
All right. Thanks again to my co-host, Agent Warrior X, for joining me. It was fun having you back. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Have a great night. We'll catch you later. Peace.